Bioorganic weapons are a global threat. Start working with the rest of the world.
Hi, this is Tim Weaver from CMVG, and I'm here with Tim Clark. How you doing, Tim?
Not too bad.
Good. So, Resident Evil 6. You've played it. You played it at the show. Is the general consensus maybe it's not quite what we were hoping it would be?
What it seemed to me slightly was, as you'd expect from a game which is effectively chopped into 3 different gameplay styles, a bit schizophrenic, and you kind of felt like they maybe weren't sure where to take the series after 5, so they've decided to take it in 3 different directions at once. Or whether that's going to prove the wisest gameplay decision, I don't know. I think for people who've seen the footage that was the latest trailer and the stuff that's been on TV, they might be thinking, well, it's gone just crazy high octane and it's chasing the Gears of War dollar. That's not quite the case. The longest section I played, and the section which you'll see in this footage you're watching now, is the stuff centred around Leon S. Kennedy, who's obviously the star of Resident Evil 4. And that stuff is kind of a return to classic survival horror roots. So you kick off, Leon's just shot the president. Bad job move if you're working for the president.
Yeah.
Because he's been zombified.
Right.
I don't think that's a spoiler. I think that happens.
No, that was in the first trailer, I think.
that happens minute 1 of the game, effectively.
Yeah.
Although I say that, you're hanging out with a lady who, at the time, I didn't know when I was at E3, but you tell me it's called Helena.
Yeah, I believe her name is Helena. Yeah.
She's classic sort of Capcom sexy chick in a waistcoat, beautiful hair,
lovely hair.
He seems quite suspicious of her for reasons that weren't quite made clear in the section of gameplay I was playing. She was having to sort of win his trust back and going, look, we can work together to stamp out this menace once and for all.
Right.
Although that seems unlikely.
Yeah.
They head off they're in a university where I think the president's been putting on some sort of a gala dinner or presentation, but obviously everyone else has either been eaten or is scarpered. So it's kind of got that kind of big luxury ye olde building that they're exploring, complete with like lightning cracks outside and some really great lighting effects, but it's initially very ponderous. Like, he can't even run at first, although the guy demoing it, or the guy speaking over my shoulder as I was playing it, insists you can run, and sure enough later on you could. But the pace is very sort of deliberate and classic survival horror.
Right, so it's very much like how Resi started out rather than how it's recently become.
Yeah, and I think that's what they have done. Like I say, they've sort of got these separate strands of Resi DNA and sort of have sent them in different directions. So eventually you explore for a bit, you see inevitably something scampering in the shadows, you come across a guy, a kind of like your classic sort of suit, who's all frightened and tells you that he's misplaced his daughter and you've got to go and find her. She's called Liz. I did bother to write that down.
Right, okay, excellent.
The voice acting is every bit as stilted and ludicrous as you can imagine. Like, it seems completely implausible, the peril. Eventually you track down Liz. Can you guess what's happened to her?
She's either been kidnapped or she's been eaten.
Second time around. She's feeling a bit under the weather.
Oh, right, okay.
You decide that the best solution to this is to get into a cramped, confined space with an elevator, and sure enough the lights go out and it all gets a bit biting.
Oh, right, yeah.
And that's when they reintroduce the quick time events to deal with her in the lift, and once she's been dispatched, you're out into, I think it's should be able to see it actually, an underground car park which is absolutely crawling with coffin dodgers, and then it gets a bit more action in. You start getting a vibe for you can now like move and shoot at the same time.
Why do you think they've done that?
I think they just have to, because I think the kind of landscape of third-person games has changed so much. People are used to kind of cover-based, roadie running around.
But why start him off where he can't run and he can't?
I think because it's a glorified tutorial and they're trying to get.
Okay.
There's some new gameplay features like. You can probably see on the screen in the footage, there's little icons guiding you where to go, so there's less chance of getting lost. He's also got like a kind of compass that he'll flip up. You activate with one of the left shoulder buttons. Kind of like Dead Space's line on the ground that shows you where to go. So it's a bit more hand-holding that way. They're clearly trying to make a really mainstream third-person action game.
I wonder why they've decided to go down this 3-strand route. Do you think it's because they feel that, because Resi 5 was met with a bit the old shrug of the shoulders? Do you think it's that they're trying to appeal to the Western market, but at the same time they want to go back to Resi's roots?
Do you know what? I think that's what they've been I know for a fact that's what they've been trying to do, you know, since circa Resi 4. Like Resi 4 was a deliberate response to, you know, I was told this specifically when Inafune was still at the company. It was a deliberate attempt to, you know, reinvent the series and win over Western gamers who are sort of reared on more action-focused gameplay. And Resi 4 was great, and then 5 kind of felt like a kind of misstep slightly in the kind of the whole sunny setting, and that didn't work for a lot of people. And now I think that a lot of fairly senior creative people are no longer at Capcom, there's, you know, arguably a crisis of confidence in Japanese development. So I think they're hedging their bets really by going, hey, you like classic survival horror, we got that. You like some more actiony stuff, we've also got that. So the action stuff takes place with Chris Redfield, who's become like a shambolic drunk, tortured by his events of Resident Evil 5. He gets drawn back into the BSAA, which you may remember.
Yeah.
Probably don't. It's
Yeah,
the group
I do, yeah.
the group from 5. They find him in a bar. He's all kind of ruined. He ends up having a bit of a scrap with at the time I was a bit jet lagged. I found hilarious was a chap called Piers Nivens.
Yeah,
who's
Piers Nivens.
Vintage Capcom name. So and then it's revealed like everyone in the bar works for the BSAA, and they're all going, "We need you back, Chris."
What, everyone in the bar?
Sorry, it seems to be. Yeah, they all seem to sort of suddenly get up and go, "We're all here for you." I don't know. It was kind of a bit like News Team Assemble from from Anchorman. So.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So that then jumped you into a. I'm trying. It was an Asian city. I want to say Hong Kong, but it might have been Shanghai. Apologies.
Yeah, I think it was Shanghai. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're involved with shooting. They're the equivalent of the Ganados from 4. They seem to be like infected with kind of sort of strange alien-y beasts. These kind of these gangs, but also there were these kind of like flying moth. I've written down flying moth devourer creature in my notes.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure that's their actual name, but
yeah. So you can't see that in this footage, but so that section is obviously completely action heavy. You're just sort of running along, gatting people with machine guns. I had a debate with someone since about whether there is a cover system, because if there is, I couldn't get it working and found it to be really clumsy. The camera's incredibly close in on your shoulder, so obscures a decent chunk of the screen, and I just found it. I mean, there was a bit where I was like monkey climbing across like a gap between two sort of blocks of apartments, and the dudes who were with me, like on my team, were like shooting the guys on the other sides, and it felt just like, to me anyway, it felt like hugely unsatisfying. I had the job of climbing while other people were doing some shooting.
Yeah, but then the cover system and in 5 was a little bit of a mess. So maybe it's just you weren't. I don't know. Maybe it was just really well disguised, or maybe they've taken it out altogether.
There's a good chance I was just doing it wrong, but
Yeah.
In any case, it still seemed clunky when you compare it to the kind of Uncharted to this world and kind of what's being done in third person. I mean, you only have to look at Dead Space, and to me, that's the kind of
benchmark.
Well, certainly 2 was, although
Yeah.
3 left me a bit underwhelmed seeing it. At
I think a lot of
stuff.
people were a bit underwhelmed by it.
But then the third strand of gameplay is you playing Jake Wesker. Wesker's
Wesker's
boy.
son.
And there was the way they described it to me is his gameplay is largely chase based.
Right.
And I went, what? And certainly the bit I played was chase based. You were being
Chased.
by like what appeared to be some sort of like a tyrant type bioweapon, but could have been even like a sort of new kind of nemesis, because he seemed pretty indestructible. Like there was certainly no sense that you could stick around and fight.
Right.
So you were hurtling along a bit like those sort of sequences where you're running towards the camera,
and everything's kind of like exploding behind you.
So obviously the first time I did it, I just died within like 0.02 of a second because I got completely muddled up by it. But I was led to believe I had the least amount of time with that version of the gameplay before I got kicked off. But I'm led to believe he's also kind of quite tasty in melee, and that's got there'd be a kind of more fist-cuffery element to it.
So we've got sort of slower paced exploration that we're seeing here. We've got Chris Redfield shooting anything that
running
moves.
gun, yeah.
And then we've got
melee stroke chase.
Melee stroke chase.
Kiss chase mode.
It
was hard to know what to make of that bit, really.
Yeah.
Like I said, I didn't spend too much time with it, so I don't want to condemn it out of hand.
No.
But I did immediately reject it like a transplanted pig organ, because it didn't feel like Resi particularly to me. But
yeah, I mean, we have to be careful not to write it off, obviously, because it's still got plenty of time in development. But I mean, your kind of initial impressions of what you saw?
You say it's got a lot of time left. I mean, it's out towards
The end of the year,
like October, I think.
I wonder whether it might not be this year.
It still seemed fairly rough around the edges to me. When I was in the Chris section, there was guys like moonwalking on the spot with their faces pressed against the wall when they were meant to be shooting me. I mean,
they are zombies.
Yeah. These are like the gang dudes. But in the Leon section, what I liked about it was it did seem to have some really nice atmosphere, and the lighting was lovely. And
yeah, I mean, these sections look quite nice. I mean, they look the bit in the hall where the party was and stuff. It looked quite evocative.
I think the issue is you just go back to 4, and 4 had such a sort of good sense of kind of like capturing this kind of coherent and quite interesting place with the whole kind of like Esperanto spouting villagers, and you were being led. And it's you're of course correct to say we've only seen a very small chunk of the game, and without seeing how it all stitches together, you wouldn't want to make any sort of judgment call really. But 4 had such a lovely pacing of kind of introducing new ideas and new baddies and new areas, and then 5 did feel like it wasn't quite as slickly put together. Just from what I saw, I definitely feel a bit nervous about how this one's going to go.
Yeah, I mean, just from the outside looking in, not having played it like you have, I mean, my worry really from the beginning has been that 3 different types of game in here. I mean, it's hard enough these days to make a game a really good game based on just pushing one idea, let alone 3 very disparate kind of ideas.
The risk is always that in any game where you switch gameplay types dramatically, even if it's in like a shooter where you suddenly throw in a vehicle section, how many times have you got in a tank and just gone, oh, I can't abide being in a tank, I just want it to be over?
Yeah.
And so the danger with this is if one of the gameplay types is even slightly less enjoyable to like a majority of the people playing it, they're going to want shot of it, and the internet being what the internet is, they're bound to like pick one of these characters types and hate on it.
Yeah. And I just my other worry is that we've never really had a great cover-based shooter kind of come out of Japan. I mean, off the top of my head, I can't think of one recently. Maybe Vanquish, but
Binary Domain was talked up as being pretty
good.
But
it ended up not being amazing. But I mean, it's just that sort of trying to appeal to the kind of Western audience. It seems like they're trying to appeal to that Western audience, but at the same time sort of making apologetic kind of noises towards their traditional audience back home.
Well, it's funny you say with Vanquish, because I think I reviewed Vanquish back at the time, and I think once you got to grips with what you were trying to do, which was a mixture of that sort of cover-based system, but also the sort of flamboyance of it being a Mikami game, and you wanted to shoot off on your jet boots and do loads of stuff. I think it's actually one of the best cover-based games out there, but I guess between the inherent Japanesiness of the kind of robotic enemies and the sci-fi setting, it was also pretty short, turned some people off. But it was the other thing that I'd say about slightly more broadly at E3, but also with Capcom, is like DMC and Metal Gear Rising Revengeance at Konami were both 2 of the best action games at the show. So you wouldn't want to.
No, I mean maybe that's me talking in unnecessarily broad strokes, but it's like the Resi 5 really hit problems when it tried to do the Gears thing, and I think that the worry. This looks much more. Much more leisurely pace, and I think it's easier to get that kind of those action beats and those horror beats in here. But I don't know. The bit they demoed at the Microsoft conference, I think it was, if I remember rightly, was just left me stone cold. I was just like, it's just like him just picking off zomboids one after the other, and then a helicopter exploding.
Yeah, there was a bit in that the bit that I thought, because I know what you mean. It did seem incredibly like. Bombastic, but then you could say that about quite a few of the things that are on show.
Yeah, that's true.
There was a brief clip in the trailer where he sort of turns a corner in a stairwell, and there's loads of zombies piling up the stairwell, and he tosses a grenade amongst them and takes a load of them out. And that reminded me of when you were playing 4, and you would go around a corner and see coming up a hill at you loads of guys with like burning torches and pitchforks, and you'd sort of go, well, I'll cap 2 of the guys in the knees and I'll try and thin the others out with a submachine gun. And that was when the game was really fun, did something quite unique. I think when you were kind of juggling weapons to deal with kind of big crowds.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see if that does play out. But yeah, at the moment the separation feels weird.
QTEs as well we've got.
Yeah.
There was some of that in the conference demo. I think if I remember rightly, there was the bit in the helicopter was the old QTE special. Yeah,
it's done tight. I mean, like I said, the bit you have in the elevator with the infected girl, they're really tightly done. I mean, it's easy to forget they sort of pioneered that in some ways, and they're definitely as good at doing it as anyone else.
But so, to sum up, is it, how at this stage, how are you kind of feeling about it? Are you feeling positive about it, or there?
I think I came away from the show a little bit down on it, but then I'm a huge Resi fan, so I had pretty high expectations. I think it's one to see what people make of it once they have time to sort of take some code away and spend probably a few hours with it. Well, I mean, I spent about 45 minutes with it probably, but I think it'd be interesting to see what when some previews start coming in kind of hands-on of people who've spent a long time with the game, because at the moment I definitely feel like it could go either way. I think they could still pull it out, because I mean I'm someone who quite enjoyed 5 as much as it was heavily criticised. I thought it was still fun, but I've got concerns about this.